So we're still looking for who these principalities and powers come from, and that brings us to the third rebellion. And the third rebellion happens not long after the Tower of Babel. Now, you know the story of the Tower of Babel. Interesting thing when you read Genesis chapter 10. Genesis chapter 10 gives you a list of the nations that were created of Noah's sons, out of Noah's sons. And there's like 70 of them. Okay, remember that number 70. 70 nations were created after the Tower of Babel. Remember, in chapter 11, what describes the Tower of Babel, there was only one group of people. There was one nation. They're all gathered together, and they didn't obey God's command to replenish and fill the earth. No, they wanted to hang out together and build a temple, if you will, to call down God. And God comes down and looks at what they say and says, these guys are out of control. Nothing will be refrained from them. Let's put a stop to this. Let's change their language. And by doing so, see the underlined part there in Genesis 11, 6-9. So the Lord scattered them abroad from thence upon the face of the earth. Now, that's what happened at the Tower of Babel. And then the Apostle Paul refers to, I believe, this event in chapter 1, where he says in your next reference, because when they knew God, they glorified him not as God, but neither were thankful, but became vain in their imaginations, and their foolish heart was darkened. Skipping on down, they changed the glory of uncorruptible God into an image made like unto man, and to birds, and to creeping things. Wherefore God gave them up. I notice they're worshiping the creation, the animal creation. They're not worshiping idols. They're not worshiping gods. They haven't arrived yet. And so God gave them up. And then two other places in Romans it says God gave them up. God gives up these people. Now, he doesn't give up on them. He just gives up dealing with them directly. He establishes the bounds of their habitation, sends them away, or they go away. And then the next chapter, Genesis is 12. God calls Abraham and calls him to be his people. Right after that. So God stops off dealing with the nations and deals only with Israel. All intending to one day get around to getting those guys back. He promises that multiple times in the Old Testament. But for now, I have nothing to do with you guys. And even Paul echoes that in Ephesians where he says, remember in times past you were without God, aliens from the covenants of promise, and without hope in the world. Remember that. That's where you were, but now, Paul says. So now, did God just let these guys go to run around and do whatever the devil they pleased? No, he didn't. He assigned principalities and powers over them for a good intent that ultimately turned bad. Read your next verse, Deuteronomy 32, 8-9. Moses is talking about what God did at the Tower of Babel. And he says, when the Most High divided to the nations their inheritance. That's what he did after the Tower of Babel. And he separated the sons of Adam, and he set the bounds of the people according to the number of the children of Israel. For the Lord's portion is who? His people, Israel. Judah is his inheritance. That's who the Lord is focusing on, Yahweh is focusing on. But he divided up these nations according, now it says the children of Israel. Now, let me ask you this. Were the children of Israel around at the time of Babel? No. There were no children of Israel for the next 400 years. So that makes me wonder, what in the world is this talking about? So remember I mentioned the Dead Sea Scrolls? The Dead Sea Scrolls have a copy of the book of Deuteronomy there that was at least dated 400 or 200 years before Jesus. I mean, it's old. It goes back. And in that copy, that Hebrew document of the book of Deuteronomy, it says that he He separated humankind. He set the bounds of the people according to the number of the children of God. What children of God are we talking about? Well, if you're not sure, the Greek translation of Deuteronomy 32 calls these the angels of God. So I believe what God did is he scattered the nations. He determined the bounds of their habitation. Paul says that in Acts 17, where he's talking to those idol worshippers in Greece, and they have an idol to the unknown God. And he says, God has determined the bounds of your habitation if haply you feel after him and find him. God doesn't want them to just go off on their own. He expects his angels to rule justly, to rule fairly, and direct these guys still in Yahweh's way, in his direction. But what happens? These guys don't. These guys not only don't, they rebel. And they become the principalities and powers.